Hi, I'm Michelle Craske from the UCLA Depression Grand Challenge, and I'm here in conversation with Metta World Peace.
Yes.
Metta is a professional basketball player from the Los Angeles Lakers, and as many of you may recall, shockwaves were sent when, back in 2010, Metta thanked his psychologist in a post-game interview after the Lakers won the NBA Finals.
Yes.
So recently, UCLA recognized Metta as a #DepressionHero, and we recognized him for his bravery back in 2010 and for the wonderful work he's done in advocating for mental health ever since then. And just a little bit of background, the UCLA Depression Grand Challenge initiated the #DepressionHero campaign in commemoration of World Health Day in order to recognize individuals who publicly share their experiences with depression, in order to let others who may be suffering know that they are not alone. And so we're particularly pleased to have you here, and especially that this is the month of May, which is Mental Health Month. So thank you very much for joining us today.
It's really good to be here. You know, anytime you get a chance to give back and just to share your experiences and help somebody else, I want to do that because people helped me when I was young and I needed, you know, a helping hand, and I got it, you know, often, and so I want to do the same thing.
That's wonderful. So actually that's a good segue into one of the first questions. When did you first know that you might be having some problems with depression and that help would be a good thing to get?
Yeah, well, it varied. So when I was younger, my mom put me in a counseling session when I was 13 years old, and it was more anger management.
Yeah.
So when you go through so many different things, you become depressed because you have no control. Right. You know, you're growing up, you're a teen. Yeah, in my situation, I had a baby at the age of 16 and a lot of other different situations happening. So all that confusion and that stress, you know, it can cause you to kind of go out your mind and then be depressed.
Yeah.
And the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
One day you're excited, one day you're depressed.
Right.
You know, and so that's what happened. Okay. You know, it kind of evolved.
So it's quite young then for you when you first noticed.
When I was young, I didn't notice it.
Somebody else,
people noticed it.
People noticed it, yeah.
You know, you don't really, when you're young, it's all about you, how you feel. You're not really thinking about somebody that sees you.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, you have a problem, or you're depressed, and they say, hey, are you all right? You know, people ask you these things.
Yeah, but it didn't sort of register that maybe...
It doesn't register.
Yeah. So when did you start to think about it? When did you start to actually think, you know what, maybe this is depression?
I started to think about it when things that I used to love, I didn't love them anymore, right? Like Michael Jackson used to be one of my favorite artists, you know, and I used to always want to do fun things, and there's a point in time where you're like not interested in those things you were interested in as a child.
Right.
And how does that happen?
Yeah.
You know, you're no longer happy every day,
right,
like you used to be, right? And how does that happen? So I started, and then you wanted to be like somebody else, or you wanted to be what somebody else wants you to be.
Right.
And then when you can't meet, you know, the criteria of somebody else's expectation, then you become even more depressed, more stressed. So I wanted to get back to being myself, the core of
who you are,
whatever person I am. Not even my name, just my soul, you know, just to be happy in general. And I said, okay, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to seek some help. A lot of people out there, such as yourself, such as myself now, that are out there, and they're very resourceful for people that need it. And that's what motivates me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Have you noticed that, do people change in the way they reacted to you when you declared that, that there was some depression or some difficulties that you were dealing with?
Well, I think when you saw celebrities come out and something happened, and then later you find out they were in the hospital seeking psychiatric help or something. Before I came out on national TV, it always was a thing where people were sad. They would say, I had to seek help because I had problems. When I came out, I was excited. And I wanted, you know, and I wanted to make it cool. Yeah. It's okay to get help. And it's okay to be sad. And you know what? You're not going to change in one day. I always tell people that if you're depressed or stressed or maybe bipolar or maybe you're it's not a chemical imbalance. Maybe it is depression. Well, you might be depressed tomorrow too.
Yeah.
You might be stressed tomorrow, but as long as you keep working on yourself, then it's something that happens over time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a process, and you want to encourage people to trust the process.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such an important message, because one of the things we know is that depression's really common across all layers of society.
Right.
Starts very young for many people, and yet there still has been this sort of shame around it, this sort of fear of expressing the need for help, which means that there are individuals who are out there who could otherwise have made more headway than they have. So what kind of advice would you give to younger people nowadays?
I would tell younger people to be themselves, because right now, especially with social media and just how we market what's cool, how we market, what's not cool.
Yeah.
You get a lot of the young group of kids wanting to be cool and not wanting to be themselves. And being yourself is cool. And sometimes you get a lot of kids questioning themselves.
Right.
Questioning their gender, or not wanting to come out, or not wanting to be happy, or not wanting to be loud, or not wanting to be, a little bit different, and I can see how hard that is for kids.
Yeah.
So my advice is be yourself, and don't feel the pressure of trying to be something or do something that you're not. And a lot of kids, if you look at the situations in some of the violent neighborhoods, they're forced to be in gangs. They don't want to be in a gang, or they're forced, not to come out and tell the world their sexuality, and they're hiding it.
Yeah.
So people are forced to do all sorts of things, especially our kids.
Yeah.
So when I get a chance and I get a platform to let them know it's okay.
Yeah.
When I came out and I said I want to thank my psychiatrist, which she was my psychologist, I didn't know at the time. It was a difference. People called me crazy. And it was weird, because I felt a little bit embarrassed that I said it. But then I thought about it. I said, how am I crazy for thanking somebody who helped me?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the media was very irresponsible at that time.
Okay.
The media was making jokes. And it's like, it's not a joke.
Right.
I was really in a bad state for a long time.
So just a reminder to people that you may submit questions to Facebook Live interview as we talk together with Metta LPs about the topic of depression and this really critical issue of being comfortable with yourself, and how the media, social media nowadays, do you feel like that might play a role in contributing to, at least for the adolescents, sort of feeling pressured? And how can we change that? How can we send the message that be yourself, it's fine?
I think you need more people contributing on social media, and not just contributing with posts that's going to get you more likes. Contributing, to the kid that's out there watching social media and they wanting to be like something they're not.
Yeah.
And just letting them know it's okay, for you to wear, baggy clothes if you want. You don't have to. So much women out there, they feel so pressured that they have to live up to the standards of social media, and then you get a kid maybe feeling pressured to having to wear the best shoes, and that's, once again, you're yourself, and everybody's different. Some people like different things. They like the glamorous life, which is okay, but I'm saying if it's not you, don't feel pressure to be something you're not. A lot of people feel pressure to be number one, and sometimes you come in second place. There's a billion people on the planet. Yeah. Not everybody's going to be number one, and you got to give it your all, and just feel comfortable that you gave it your all, and feel comfortable being yourself. And like I said, more people need to contribute to that message.
And do you feel like the support that you got from your psychologist was an avenue that allowed you to reach that place? Yeah. I
was lucky. It was things I didn't learn as a kid that I learned with my psychologist. I had a lot with my psychologist. If I can count on my fingers, I had my first one. I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
As a junior high school kid, and then I had one in high school, college, one in college. So that's 3. Then I had my first psychiatrist when I was 19 years old,
Okay.
when I made it to the Chicago Bulls,
Yep.
briefly. And then I had more psychologists when I was in Indiana. Had about 3 or 4 in Indiana, and I played for the Pacers. That's about 8, and then I had a couple more along the way.
Okay.
And the one that taught me a lot, when I started to listen, she taught me how to breathe,
Yep.
and how to control my
Your
emotions.
emotions. Mm-hmm.
And when I had that first session, and I wasn't as tense, and I knew I wasn't gonna perfect it overnight, but it felt really good, and I started to work on it. And practice.
Yeah, great. So you became engaged. You started to
Yeah.
actually work the method. Yeah.
The breathing was great for me.
Yeah.
I started to see things differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that sort of overlaps with what we're trying to do at UCLA is we recognize that in the student body there's quite a lot of people are feeling depressed and anxious and stressed, and whether that's increasing over the years is difficult to know, but certainly there's a lot of need. And how can we access that? How can we help people when it's the need is so great? And so one of our goals is to work out, can we really initiate a sufficiently large study that would enable us to say this is the cause of depression for this person and therefore they need this treatment.
Right.
Whereas somebody else it may be a slightly different factor. So you mentioned kids growing up in more dangerous neighborhoods, that may be different than somebody else who doesn't grow up in those kind of neighborhoods. It's all depression.
It is.
But there may be slightly different things going on that lead to a better treatment, and that's what we're trying to do with the Depression Grand Challenge.
Yeah, and I think the Depression Challenge is great. You hit it on the nose. Everybody's different. I remember being diagnosed, and I would say irresponsibly diagnosed. Not that it's a doctor's fault, but you can't diagnose everybody in general. You can't just say, "I know your problem." You really have to, dig deeper. And like you said, everybody has a different issue that's going through, some depression, and not everybody's going to want to tell you what they're going through. Some people hide things, so it makes it even harder for the doctor to even figure it out. But when you get more comfortable, with that person, and hopefully, if the person really wants to get that much help, then they have to really expose themselves and be vulnerable.
That's right. It's a vulnerability. So once you can get through that vulnerability, and then, as you say, get into the process where you can actually find something that you can use for yourself.
It's true. And when I started to become more vulnerable, it was working. So I would just tell my psychologist everything. Because I'm like, she's helping me, so I'm just going to spill the beans.
Very great. She must have really liked working with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about with your peers in professional sports? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I think everybody's different. Some people grow up with different backgrounds in professional sports, but you always try to make sure if you see something's wrong with one of your colleagues, your teammates, just ask them, "Are you all right?" Give them good advice. Be very transparent and honest to build that relationship. It's so many people that grow up in different walks of life. Thomas Robinson, I think his mom passed away, and then I think the next week his auntie or somebody passed away. And when he was in college, he had to deal with that. Then you get a guy like, Josh Powell, who grew up in some rough circumstances in his own household. Lamar Odom, who grew up with his parents experimenting with drugs and not raising him the right way as a mother and a father is supposed to raise their children in a household. And then you might get a kid who comes from extreme amount of wealth, who was neglected by the parents, unknowingly or unwillingly, and the parents. That can cause depression also. So it's not biased.
Yeah, that's right. It affects everybody in every walk of life. And the idea of being able to, as you started off by saying, just check in with the person that you're worried about, just so you're doing okay. Seems to me like that's a critical thing that we could do so much more.
It's true.
And part of the goal of this interview and part of the goal of the whole Depression Grand Challenge is to let people know it's okay to talk about this. It's okay to share your concerns. and reaching out to people who you're worried about. It's okay to check in with them.
And I'm not good at that. I'm not good at reaching out to like my friends and saying how you're doing. But now I do a little bit more. One of my really good teammates, Al Harrington, he's really good at that. He'll reach out to you and say, hey, let's get some lunch. And for me, that's like so hard.
Yeah.
But you feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
I have a friend, Stephon Bonds, from New York City, played basketball together, went to high school together. He reaches out to me, hey, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah.
You know, and that means so much.
Yeah.
You're coming from your friends.
Yeah, it's a caring.
So people, that's a form of therapy also when you're reaching out to somebody that you didn't know was going through anything, just checking up on your friends, checking up on your siblings, you know, and making sure they're okay.
Yeah. So just a reminder for those of you who may have questions, please feel free to send them in through Facebook Live interview. We're happy to take them. What would you say to yourself as if you could go back to when you were a younger person? What would you tell yourself now?
Well, when I was younger, it was no speaking to that guy. Knowing what I know now and knowing how I am, passionate, driven, I put my mind to something, I'm going to try to do it. And at that age, I put my mind to I'm not listening to nobody.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how I was. And the only way to get through to me was for me to make mistakes.
Okay.
Unfortunately. But, you know, if I can say something to try to trigger something, you know, maybe you say you're throwing your life away, or maybe you say something like that, but that wouldn't work because I was trying to throw my life away at that point.
I understand.
Self-destructive, you know, very self-destructive at my earlier career. Really didn't care if I lost it all, you know, and that's a problem when you are self-destructive like that.
Yeah. I'm just noticing that we now have over 1,000 views, and we encourage people to send in their questions and comments for this last 15 minutes of our interview. I'm curious, you know, because depression affects all of us, and in whether we suffer it or we know people who suffer it, it's such a common problem. So it affects people's performance, whether it be at work or at home or on the court.
Right.
How did you sort of, with that, how did you keep yourself focused on the game in the midst of that?
It's a good question, because when I was at my peak, I was in Indiana. I had my best season, averaging about 24 points. You know, that's pretty cool. And I just came off Defensive Player of the Year, and I was an All-Star. So I was going this way in terms of my basketball career, but emotionally I was going in the opposite direction. Then I got suspended, lost everything in terms of awards, accolades, endorsements, you know. So it was going opposite directions. I was talented enough to average 20 and 24 points and still be stressed and depressed. Don't know how I did it.
Okay.
You know, it was tough. I wasn't able to maximize, you know, my career. So I didn't do it. You know, my career is very up and down, so I wasn't able to take my basketball career to that Hall of Fame level.
Okay.
Whereas if I was more mentally stable, it would have happened. So what I did was I told myself, I don't care where I'm at today. By the time I'm 35, 37, 38, I want to be exactly where I was supposed to be.
Right.
So at the age of 38 or 37 now, still talented, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I was playing catch up.
Yeah.
I wasn't rushing it.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically, emotionally. I wasn't trying to get it back in one day.
Yeah. But that's a great story of hope and inspiration for so many, because when people are feeling like they're in a rut and they can't find their way out, just knowing that if you take a step back and look at things, maybe engage in some kind of help seeking, and then you can actually reach the goals that you
can
set.
reach the goals.
Yeah. And what about with younger kids? So I know that you've done a lot of work with younger kids in mentoring or coaching, and that part of your overall advocacy for mental health. What kind of message do you give to really young kids?
Well, it's so many different types of young kids out there.
Yeah.
So I find myself speaking to all types of young kids, but the Lakers have a variety of fans. You know, you got Latino fans, you have white fans, you have black fans, and Asian fans, and everybody's coming from different backgrounds. So when I'm giving general advice, it's how was school?
Yeah.
You know, but when I meet different people, I always try to get a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm talking, doing an engagement, because everybody deserves the same attention.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves the same type of encouragement, not just an urban kid who's poor, or not just going to a community center, doing a basketball camp in a rich neighborhood because you're getting paid and just staying there. Like, you have to give all demographics that same attention,
right,
because they're growing up together.
Right.
You know, a 13-year-old kid from Beverly Hills is not older than a 13-year-old kid from an urban community.
Right.
One day they're going to cross paths. So you want to give the same advice to everybody.
I think that's such an important message, that everybody, again, whatever background one comes from, that everybody has equal rights to help and to care.
Absolutely.
And there shouldn't be any differentiation in that regard. Suzanne from Austin wants to know if either of us have a depression hero. I will ask you if you have a depression hero yourself, somebody else who you regard as being
a depression hero. Well, all right, so I can go to some of my people that I idolize. So Dennis Rodman, one of my favorite players ever. He had an up and down career. I admired the fact that he showed people how stressed and depressed he really is. Now, people say he didn't overcome, but he cried on TV. He let you know how much he missed his child, his wife. He let you know what he's been through with his family, and he cried in front of the world, you know, for help, and probably still needs it.
Yeah.
Some type of I would say clarity on his life and why are you here, you know. And he's one of my heroes because he just showed he showed so much expression.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it.
Yeah, that transparency and
Yeah.
again, public sharing. I would say my depression hero is my mother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mainly because in my family we had her firstborn had some very severe emotional difficulties, and she spent her life trying to improve the conditions of health.
Wow.
And so that no surprise that myself and my sisters all ended up in mental health professions trying to help other people.
That's great.
Yeah. She was a good role model.
And then my family, we're opposite. A lot of my family ended up in mental health institutions. My little brother, institution since he was 10. He's 34 now. He's never really been out. He's been from institution to prisons and back and forth. And my older brother was in prison. My younger sister was in a mental health institution. My dad's functional on medication. My auntie is still in the institution, been there since I was like 10. She's probably never going to get out. And, you know, so it's people like yourself that, you know, that help us out a lot, you know, especially me and my family. I'm not in an institution, but that's my family. Sometimes I feel like I'm there.
Yeah.
When you can't help your auntie get out,
Yeah.
or your little brother or your sister get out of an institution and you leave them,
Yeah.
and you go home and they still have to stay in the room, it hurts a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another key factor that motivated me to give back, because I wanted to figure out, what is this problem?
That's right.
How can we help?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How can we help, and how can we do better at helping?
Right.
How can we move? Because, you know, depression has been around for eons.
Absolutely.
And treatments work.
Right.
But there's so much more that we could do if we could really devote the resources and energy just to focusing on depression.
It's true.
And I think that's what we're trying to do at UCLA, is bring all of the disciplines together, all of the people to work on the same problem, so we can finally get a better handle on what is causing this. Is it biological? Is it environmental? Is it the combination? And once we know that, how can we move beyond existing treatments to things that are going to be more effective?
It's true, and I feel like people are affected by so many different things. If somebody was to see a doggy hurt on the street, like, that affects somebody. When people see war on TV, that affects them.
Yeah.
And people don't understand, or probably don't think it affects them, but it's affecting the world. You know, different things affect the world, and you know, we got to address these issues if we want it to get better.
Yeah. So, Metta, Jill asks, This is a really interesting question. Yeah. How has your personal experience with mental health been influenced or changed by being a dad?
It was tough. Yeah. It's tough when your kids see you going through something, and you're very vulnerable and weak, and you still got to be a dad. Yeah. And so if I want to translate that into basketball terms, you're losing the game and you got to win. Yeah. I was losing the parenting game. Yeah. And I didn't care who saw me lose. I didn't care what I had to do. I was going to win that game. Yeah. So I got better.
So that motivated you even more then?
It motivated me, and it motivated me to be a winner, for my kids. Yeah. To come out on the other side. Yeah. Because it could have went the other direction. Yeah. And yeah, I'm an MBA and making some money, and my kids is okay, but that's not what they want. They want a strong dad in the household. And you know what? It wasn't just me that made it happen. There was a lot of help, psychologists, and I'm proud to say it, and it made me stronger. So anytime you get a chance to get an edge, a competitive edge, I'll take it all day. Yeah. And if it means, my kids, feeling better about their dad, me raising them better, taking a little bit of stress off them, making them more proud, I'll do it again. Yeah. I'll do it again.
Well, you're a very rare person, because you not only felt the way or found the way to get help, but giving back, whether it's to your family or to the community, and the great things you've done to help kids who themselves might be suffering, or to raise awareness around mental health.
It was tough because there was times where, especially in my career, up and down, a lot of problems, dysfunctional, so very disruptive to my organizations that I play for, and in the locker room to my teammates. It was times I wanted to kind of give up and just say, okay, things happen, I'm going to move on. But during those tough times, I still was giving back. Yeah. I still was pushing it. I still was giving back, and I feel like now things are balancing out a little bit better for me.
That's why you're our hero.
Absolutely.
So I just want to remind everybody that this is a Facebook Live interview with Metta World Peace, and I think we have just a few minutes left, so if there are any remaining questions, now is the time to ask them. And I think we do have a question, and this is from Cleve. How do I help, or what do I say to my friend who might be going through depression? So if you have a friend who you think is depressed, is there anything in particular you've found to be most helpful, or does it vary from person to person?
Yes, that's a good question. I think, when your friend's going through something, you got to ask them right away, what's going on? Are you okay? You got to be direct. Maybe pull them to the side or call them on the phone. But you definitely should ask right away. Because you never know, like I said earlier, you never know what one of your friends or siblings are going through. So you just tell them that you feel a certain way about how they feel, and you want to know. Sometimes people can say no. They can be very, they'll push you off.
In the moment, right?
In the moment, defensive. Yeah. I don't need help. Yeah. Or I'm okay. Yeah. And that's fine too.
That's fine too.
You just keep plugging away, or just making sure you monitor your friend. And if they come to you and say they do need help, then help them find the resources they need. There's a lot of resources out there, from 1-800 lines to online. So sometimes, if you get a friend that comes to you, maybe you can help them find a resource. Yeah. And
one of the things that we've known is that just showing that caring, just by asking, as you say, the question, you're showing concern, you're showing care for that person. And maybe they'll, as you say, say, no, I don't want it, I'm fine. But you've still shown care, and that's really an important element.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And have you noticed over the years, because this is now, it's 2010 when you made the public announcement, it's now 2017, do you feel like people are more aware now, that they're more willing to talk? Do you get different reactions from people now than you did initially when you talk about it?
Yeah, I get a lot of people coming up to me now saying thank you. And just when you think they're going to say thank you for the championship or you're a great player, they say thank you for being a mental health advocate.
Ah, that's great.
And it's like, wow, that's never happened before. You know, when I was a young kid playing basketball, it was always, wow, you was great at St. John's. Your defense is really good.
Uh-huh.
Wow, you can score now. It was never that. Now you're getting things like thank you for being a mental health advocate. You know, you would have never thought of that.
Uh-huh.
And still to this day, I'm like, what does that really mean?
Uh-huh.
You know, to somebody saying that to me.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it probably means there's somebody in their lives that that is suffering, and so you've given them hope.
I appreciate the fact that I was able to have platforms to help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, as much as the media made me upset in my past or maybe was against me, they helped me also, getting my message out and being able to give somebody else some encouragement to help themselves.
And do you see yourself as you're moving forward doing more of this kind of work?
Absolutely. You know, I had an Excel University, which is my foundation, and we focus on mental health awareness. And I'm not doing it as much, but I'm working with other organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still going to be giving back and trying to do what I can.
Yeah. I think we have another question here. Zachary asks, from your coaching experience, what do you appreciate if someone when you are coaching them? And this is our last question.
Yes, when I'm coaching somebody, as I've done with Palisades High School, we coached the girls team over there, won back-to-back titles, so that was great. But you just try to, get coached with experience. Luke Walton said this when somebody asked him a question a couple weeks ago, and you just try to bring your character out and your experiences out. You try to give it, to the player you're coaching.
Yeah.
And I thought it made a lot of sense, when Coach said that as I was watching TV, and that's an approach that I take. You just try to be yourself when you're out there. Don't be anybody else, and give these kids an experience. More than just a basketball drill, more than just dribble through your legs and shoot. You got to give them more because some of these kids need more. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank people for watching. I want to remind you that you can follow us on @UCLA Think Grand across platforms. You can email us at grandchallenges@ucla.edu if you have any questions that weren't answered now. There will be an archived copy of the video that will be accessible. And most of all, I want to thank you for everything you've done, for your willingness to share the really powerful work that you do and the number of lives that you affect. So thank you very much.
Just thank you.